Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi again, everybody, and welcome to the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. I'm Ken Calvert alongside Father Joe Grimaldi. The Father Joe podcast is proudly supported by Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, 12 Mile and Telegraph in Southfield. The spring savings sales event is going on now at Star Lincoln, and that means additional savings on every Lincoln in stock. Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, they treasure your time. Experience the Star treatment. If you're in the greater Detroit area and you're looking for a new Lincoln, then Star Lincoln is the only answer. Whether you crave a new Lincoln MKC, Lincoln MKX, the classic Lincoln Navigator, or the awesome Lincoln Nautilus, get the Star treatment. You deserve it. Give them a call, drop on by, and you'll see why. They've been in business for decades. Both Father Joe and I are driving the Lincoln MKC, and I love mine. In a hurry, shop online, starlincoln.com. Hoot McInerney Star Lincoln, 12 Mile and Telegraph in Southfield, home of the Star treatment. So more than halfway through Lent.
Oh, my God, yes.
I think 10 days away from Palm Sunday.
Right.
So we're clipping right along. And as I said last week, time flies when you're fasting.
But it's a time to renew our resolutions.
Well, I was going to ask you something real quickly. Last Sunday was Laetare Sunday, correct?
Correct.
All right. Did you wear rose vestments?
You know, that's fading. I'm not. There's no pun intended.
Well, you're not a fan of the rose vestments. No. You told me that last year. I remember
that. But it's fading. It's fading. Hardly anybody wears it anymore.
Do you actually get one day off, a reprieve from fasting on Laetare Sunday?
Well, every Sunday you want if you...
Yeah, but a lot of people try and stay really strict and firm to the fast.
And I say all the more power to them.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is great. But it's Sunday. It's never been officially defined, but many people look at it this way. It's not really Lent on Sunday, so you're able to have, a nice meal and all of this other stuff. The other thing, too, is, Fridays we're to abstain from meat.
Right.
And very often some big event, whether it be an engagement party or something like that.
Oh.
So the diocese is inundated with phone calls. Can we have a dispensation for eating whatever,
Yeah.
But something occurred last week that, stayed in my mind. There was a funeral, and of course, the people planned a luncheon after the funeral. And it was done at the church because they have a very nice hall where the people can have this lunch. But they really never bothered to ask what was being served because they were just, having a lunch. And it was Friday, and sure enough, the day of the funeral, they find out it was chicken. Well, there was a lot of people there were a lot of people, I should say, really upset about that. And so after Mass, people came up to me and said, when it comes to that kind of stuff, make sure you use common sense, okay? If there is no other choice, you did not choose to eat meat on that luncheon. Yeah. It was offered to you, and that's all there is. So I says, go ahead. It's that type of thing. But it's kind of interesting because people forget about common sense.
That's an important part of this. That's good. I like that because I think technically in most places around the world, maybe not so much here in the United States, it's rude to pass up a meal that's been offered.
Sure.
If someone brings you into a gathering and offers you food and drink, you are welcome in our home.
Sure.
So, I think so. I think common sense does play a big part in this. But I can see how that happens. I was thinking while you were talking about how I notice throughout Lent how all of the fast food restaurants always manage to focus on
their fish
sandwiches. I mean, be it
And they raised their prices on that, too. So.
Be it McDonald's, Burger King, Culver's, you name it, boy. You can't beat the fish fry going on at McDonald's. Oh, I dare say you can beat the fish fry going on at McDonald's. But we still are in the throes of Lent. And
Correct.
we were talking about, there are 2 times during the Catholic calendar, during the year, that we need to go to confession. Advent and then Lent. Is there such a thing as a communal confession?
I think when we say communal confession, we have to define what it means.
Mm-hmm.
There is such a thing as a communal absolution, but that is so rare. It has to be in a state of emergency, and, the plane is coming down, and people want, and there's a priest on board, and he can give absolution. And so it's a rare thing to have this communal absolution. Now, when they speak about a communal service, a penance service, it's really a very beautiful service. And actually, the church gets pretty crowded, both at Advent and Lent, when we have those communal services. It's a regular liturgical ceremony. You have readings, you have music that lends itself to the readings and to Lent. You have the responsorial psalm after the first reading. You have the gospel. You have the priest who does the preaching, usually on one of those nice parables that emphasizes the Lord's love to reconcile with one another and so on. Then this may or may not happen, but very often they'll give a penance, after you confess your sin. Make sure that you have in mind what kind of a penance you're going to do. Now, it could be something that you pray about, or it could be something that you abstain from in one way or other. In any case, once the major part of the service is over for the communal part, then everybody goes to the individual priest. On a night like that, we may have as many as 15 priests that are scattered around the church.
Yeah.
And then the people just go to confession. If they need a lot more counseling, see, it's not a time for counseling. It's a time to confess and to be absolved, okay? So if you need counseling, you should plan on going and making an appointment later so that, it doesn't have to be that night, but another time. But when you have that particular individual confession, which is part of that penance service, the priest will give the penitent absolution, and once they have absolution, they're free to leave. So that's the way the whole thing works.
Should or do the priests, do you, Father Joe Grimaldi, on occasion, run into someone who you think, as the priest, needs counseling beyond just the communal confession that day? You may say, I think we ought to discuss this more later on. Have you ever had to do that?
I don't remember particulars, but I can see where it could happen.
But you follow what I'm saying,
Definitely,
right? In other words, I don't mean to say that anybody tried to skirt the rules by going, if I go to this communal liturgical service and then I break off and go to my individual confession, I'm about to lay something fairly heavy down with the priest, and he may say, I think you and I should get together maybe later on and discuss this even further.
So you're saying that you would see where people might withhold absolution?
No, I'm saying more that they may be carrying something rather heavy in their hearts.
Well, you can suggest that, but I don't think you can demand it.
Okay.
Because the absolution is final.
Meaning the priest on your side of the equation. Okay.
However, there's nothing that says that you can't say, at some other time, would you be able to see me so we could discuss this further? And you would have to bring it up because of the importance of the seal of confession, where the priest can never repeat what has been said in confession. When you do ask someone to see you, they have to bring up that particular topic. So in other words, if I speak to Mr. Jones, And I say, I would like to further discuss this with you, if you don't mind. If you can, please see me at another time. Now, when I do see that individual, I can't say, well, you said that you did this. No, you have to let me know what you want to know, okay? So, in other words, the seal of confession is that strong. I know a lot of people can't believe it, they always bring up that classic example of, what if somebody comes in and says they just murdered somebody?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is this. The priest, in his compassion, will try to console the individual, but as far as absolution, usually the priest will say, I can't give you absolution until you turn yourself in.
Right. I remember you telling me that a long time ago.
Yeah. So it's, that to me is common sense. I mean, you're speaking about something that has a lot of repercussions. So
and television used to take license with that.
Oh, they love that.
They would love that one. Like, come on, Father, give it up. I know he told you something.
Yeah.
Come on, Father. And you, I can't, I tell you, I can't. It's the way of the church. I'm not allowed to tell you anything. You're going to have to drag me out of here, see? So now that I've done an entire movie reel for us.
You did a beautiful job. I like that.
Thank you very much. Is this a service that the children should probably stay away from?
Well, let me put it this way. During this time of year, each Catholic school has their penitential service. So each class is going to have their own penitential service. Then, even for religious education, they have their own penitential service. So what I'm saying is they try to give as many opportunities as possible for even the kids to go to confession. Even the little ones who are just made their first communion, they come and, it's like listening to them and being compassionate and being sensitive to what they have to say. Yeah. Usually you have to coax them a little bit.
Sure you do, yeah.
Say, now listen, do you have any brothers and sisters? Oh, yes, Father. I have one brother and one sister. Well, how do you interact with them? Do you ever fight? And say, well... Or what about your parents? Do you live with both parents? Oh, yes, Father. Do you listen to what they say? Well, sometimes. I said, well, are you going to try to do better? I said, that's what confession is all about. You go to confession, you confess your sins so you know what they are, and then you do better for the next time. So anyway, it's kind of an interesting thing that you do with the young people.
Sure.
And then, of course, when you're dealing with the 8th graders, it's a little bit different. High schoolers different, and adults are different. So it depends on who the audience is.
And the RCIA also does probably their own program as well.
The catechumens, it would be their very first confession. So you almost have to do like a training session. Now, even the candidates, because usually the only ones who really demand confession is the Catholic Church, whereas the other churches, which makes people candidates if they want to become Catholic, they were baptized, legitimately, and so on and so forth, and then choose to enter the Catholic Church. So we call them candidates.
Right.
So, yes, for them it would be also a first confession as well.
All right. I have a quick question for you. Do other Christian churches, because I don't know, do they have confession?
Well, I suspect that maybe the Orthodox do. But
what about the Episcopals?
I don't think so. It's not something that's demanded.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's curious. I wonder why. I mean...
Well, people object to the idea that they have
rhetorical question, they say.
But still, they have to... They object to the idea that they have to confess to another human being. Okay?
I see.
So, and I think in that case, what they're forgetting is this, that the human being is a representative of Christ at that point. Not that he doesn't have his own faults and everything else. And, and I think that's also because of all the scandals that have occurred in the past. people are also very edgy about going to confession. You know, we were speaking about, in the last podcast, the last two anyway, about what makes a good Catholic, you know, a practicing Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, usually, in quotes, the practicing Catholic does make confession on a regular basis, whether it be every 3 months, 3 months, 6 months, or a year, but they do go to confession. There are many Catholics that just refuse to do that. So I would say a lot of Catholics never go to confession. And I'll say why. Because my experience is, depending on where I'm hearing confessions, in some churches you could be there a whole hour, and maybe one person will show up. In other places where I'm regularly there, they go for a whole hour and a half, and there's nonstop, one after another. So it depends on who the people are, because not everybody sees it as an urgent part of being a Catholic.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're picking and choosing and so on and so forth.
Well, I was going to say, I was just reading about this the other day when I was looking up practicing Catholic information I came across, and I had never seen it before. They're called Cafeteria Catholics.
Yeah.
You've heard that before.
Sure.
I hadn't. Where you pick and choose.
Right.
You know, you pick and choose the parts of the Catholic Church that you think most apply to you, when in fact all should apply to you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that gets back to that podcast that we did on what is a practicing Catholic, and are you sure? You know, so I found that to be a really good way to describe what you just mentioned about most Catholics, or a lot of Catholics, don't go to confession because they don't want to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is one of the more uncomfortable elements of being a Catholic.
No, I was just going to add that very often people forget that today the lines are very long for people trying to see the psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to pay big bucks for a half hour. And I'm not criticizing that. I know that there is a need for psychologists. Yeah. In the old days, there were lines that were just unstoppable around the church every Saturday.
I remember that as a kid.
And so people would go in, and then they would come out of the confessional with a sense of burdens being lifted from their shoulders. Here I am starting a new life, you know, and everything is beautiful. And so tomorrow morning I'll be going to communion. And so I see it from the psychological point of view as a very good thing, besides the responsibility as a Catholic to go to confession at certain times. You know, people say, well, you know, what do I do? I'm 95 years old. Even if I want to commit sin, I don't. Okay, I can't. So,
don't make me laugh. It hurts.
So they say, why do I have to go to confession? And so it's kind of, you know, the idea that confession is a means of trying to better your life. That's what it is. It's a means of bettering your life.
You know, I always thought of it this way as a kid. I always remembered that I think it was one of the car wash brand names. Maybe it was Jack's. Let's just say it was Jack's Car Wash. And I always said, a clean car seems to ride smoother. You know what I mean? And I always felt that way with confession. You just kind of came out and you felt lighter. You felt
Correct,
felt like you had just gone through some sort of a spiritual car wash.
Right,
you know what I mean?
And that's the psychological point of view.
And
there is also the religious point of view.
I realize that. Yeah.
But it's kind of an interesting way.
But you were talking about the way that you would feel as a young adult. You would come out going, refresh. Yeah. I just rebooted the old soul here, like a computer, you know?
Correct.
Well, there's only a couple of Sundays left, so...
You know, it's kind of interesting. Some churches decide that it should be done early on in Lent. Others wait till the last week of Lent, you know, this type of thing. So it depends. Now, because the penitential service, we call it, is held, you would expect that on Good Friday and Holy Saturday, you know, the lines would not be so long.
Good Friday has a feeling all to itself.
Yeah, we usually don't have confessions that day.
And I think that's a smart thing.
Unless they're asking for it individually.
Right, yeah. Well, thank you. That was, I confess we're out of time.
Is that right?
Absolutely,
well, happy to be with you.
It's good to be with you. And we look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. I'm Ken Calvert along with Father Joe, and we'll see you next time.
I look forward to it. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe podcast.
If you'd like, you can email us. It's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. That's frjoepodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook. Simply search Father Joe Grimaldi. And thanks for listening, everyone.